Deltas, swamps, rivers, and large flooded plains are essential links between aquatic and terrestrial environments. These great wetlands play a vital environmental role for the planet. Whether in the water, at ground level, or high up in the canopy, exceptional wildlife and flora have found shelter here. And yet, living in these flooded environments is a constant challenge. The powerful water cycle reigns over these zones with a relentless hand. In Borneo, the Kinabatangan Sanctuary is no exception. The succession of monsoon and dry seasons inflict extreme conditions on its inhabitants. This lush green setting is a haven for unique species. This is the heart of the Kinabatangan Wildlife Sanctuary. This region, also called the Gift of Earth, is home to the last fragments of one of the oldest forests on our planet, born 130 million years ago. It lies northeast on the island of Borneo, in the state of Sabah in eastern Malaysia. This reserve stretches out over close to 70,000 hectares, along the river that gave it its name, right up to the mangrove that borders the Sea of Sulu. If the name Kinabatangan snaps out like the bite of the crocodile that lurks on its banks, in this world where water rules, life prevails. Throughout the seasons, the powerful monsoons, the vigor of the equinox tides, and the strength of the river have shaped a large variety of habitats suitable for a unique and thriving wildlife. The toing and froing of the tides feed the mangrove, which shelters strange-looking primates. These proboscis monkeys are unique to the island of Borneo. Beyond these coastal swamps, the river is flanked by narrow riverine meadows. Here, a very rare population of pygmy elephants can find the tall grass they feast on before returning to their forest sanctuary. The ramifications of these still giants hide other endangered animals, such as the orangutan. Nowadays, though, deforestation threatens these fragile ecosystems. Intensive culture of palm tree oil is progressively destroying the last wild bastions in Borneo. Along the river, only 27,000 hectares of fragmented forest still resist this mad and destructive expansion. This is the month of October. The great monsoon season is at hand. A time when fierce predators move deep into the Kinabatangan. Marine crocodiles are at home in salt or fresh water alike. They will take advantage of the equinox tides that push the sea far out into the meanders of the river to move upstream. The largest living reptiles on Earth will head for their favorite mating lands. This predator can measure up to 7 meters long and weigh close to a ton. Opportunist, it can prey on all sorts of animals: crabs, tortoises, birds, monkeys, buffaloes. Its assault can be lethal. At the average speed of 3 to 5 kilometers per hour, the estuary crocodile is going to take advantage of the situation to expand its hunting territory. Above the delta, the forest is strewn with quaint and peaceful conformations where life abounds. These oxbows were former meanders of the Kinabatangan. They became detached from the river to form small lakes. All along these dormant waters, on a thick soil rich with organic nutrients, the trees thrive better. Here, they are larger and more impressive than those rooted on the riverbanks. Malatus muticus are particularly well suited to the variations in the water level. Soon, the water will swallow up their roots. Life has settled at every level of this vertical world. Before they have to deal with the whims of the sky, some animals dare a furtive foray out on the open land. An opportunity that water monitors and lizards on the lookout can't afford to miss. Much higher up in the canopy, some of the mammals have developed astonishing motor skills. They can glide, like this incredible flying squirrel. An efficient strategy that avoids having to set foot on ground that has disappeared underwater. Perched 30 meters high, the orangutan can also play the funambulist. Malaysians have nicknamed him Man of the Forest. Its proportionate hands, feet, and arms allow him to move freely during the fruit season. At the end of October, when fruit is scarce, he must do with young shoots or the lush foliage that his habitat has to offer. In November, torrential rains and winds from the northeast are the forebearers of the great monsoon. Very soon, the river waters will flood the whole sanctuary, engulfing the roots of the mangrove and trickling into every nook and cranny of this vast damp zone. Relentless rain showers will now upset everyone's habits in Kinabatangan until February. In one day, rainfall can reach up to 100 millimeters. Activity has considerably slowed down for the long-nosed monkey and the other species that live here. It only took a few days for the river and tributaries to overflow. Precipitations are 7 times higher than during the dry season. Sometimes an impromptu sunny spell disrupts the droning litany of the monsoon. The northeast winds that carry the humidity of the sea quiet down. This female crocodile has settled here in this quiet, isolated arm of the river when the rains began. She has buried close to 60 eggs in a nest that she dug out on the riverbank and then covered with leaves. She will remain on the lookout throughout the incubation period, ready to pounce on any intruders. Even underwater, the slightest suspicious vibration will trigger an immediate reaction. If all goes according to plan, the water level will be higher once the eggs are ready to hatch. The little crocodiles will only have a short distance to crawl to find refuge in the river. But choosing such a site could backfire on the brood. The water level is constantly rising. It could drown out the nest. After 2 months of intense precipitations, the water has become one with the earth, sea, and forests. Near the coasts, silt-laden water flows into the mangrove. These rich nutrients feed the microorganisms in the mudflats. Moving in perfect tempo, anableps, these strange walking four-eyed fish, and crabs have come to find food at low tide. A godsend for the white-breasted kingfisher. The tide will turn immediately. It's time for the fiddler crab to return to his home. Marine wildlife will now be able to participate in the feast. For hundreds of species, the mangrove is first and foremost a gigantic nursery. Here, the youngest animals can grow sheltered from predators in clear water, protected by the tangle of roots. If life thrives at the foot of the mangrove trees, it is also abundant in the treetops. Proboscis monkeys have overtaken on the higher levels of the mangrove. They are one of the rare mammals to have adapted to this brackish environment. The Asian Cyraneo's nose can measure up to 21 centimeters, supposedly to attract the females and their graceful turned-up nose. His stomach allows him to digest food that other primates can't digest. Its intestinal system weighs 1/4 of its body weight. bacteria digests the cellulose and toxins found in mangrove tree leaves. These reckless acrobats won't hesitate to leap into nothingness to move from one tree to the other. In the end, the swells didn't destroy the precious brood. About 80 days later, the first babies are finally hatching. After intensive efforts to pierce through the shells, they will have to reach the river as fast as possible to hide from the birds and predators and find their first crustaceans to feed on. Surviving the first days after birth is a true prowess for young crocodiles. Less than 10% of the brood will make it to adulthood and become the most feared creatures of the Kinabatangan. At the beginning of February, once the river has reached its highest level, emerged land becomes rare. Some of the animals will be stuck on small islets, cut off from the rest of the world. Mark Ankranaz is patrolling the last walkable paths in the sanctuary. For 15 years now, the veterinarian has worked for the conservation of orangutans. Together with Dr. Isabel Lachman, he has set up a program for their conservation in collaboration with the residents of the region.
Super, this is great. You often see this during heavy downpours like now. They build a roof just to protect themselves from the rain. And when it really rains heavily, here it can sometimes rain 2, 3, 4 days in a row. Orangutans stay in their nest throughout the downpour. As soon as it stops, they'll come out of their nest and go looking for food. This is a forest where all the high trees have been chopped down. It's been degraded and fragmented by the oil palm plantations. There are animals that live separated from each other on forest islands because of the agricultural development. The biggest problem we face in Kinabatangan is what we call habitat fragmentation. During the rainy season, when the water level rises, some orangutans are completely isolated on these inundated forest islets. They can't swim. which means that they are trapped on islets of only 2, 3, 4 trees. If the flood doesn't last too long, the orangutan can wait. But if it goes on anything from a week to 3 weeks, they have very little chance of survival because they won't find food. They're stuck up in their trees. Once in a while, some orangutans climb down to try and cross over. Some make it, but others drown. And don't forget, we also have crocodiles around, so that's a real danger. Oil palms are plants not adapted to floodplains. So to reduce flood damage as much as possible, draining systems have been created to evacuate the water. This means that all the excess water converges towards the main river, the Kinabatangan. Drains all through the forest can create impassable barriers for animals like orangutans. And a wide corridor with no trees to make a natural bridge is an obstacle for them, because they can no longer cross over. And if they can't cross over, they're cut off.
The fragmentation of the habitat and the lack of circulation corridors caused the death of many animals during the flooding season. The monsoon also helps regenerate the sanctuary. This is the period when the river and tributaries spread the sediments they carry throughout the forest. At the end of February, the trade winds that bring rain die down progressively to leave room for a short respite. It will last only a few weeks. All along the rivers that have quieted down, the open banks have given birth to new strips of riverine vegetation that form an organic path. During the month of March, when the flood recedes, the pygmy elephants from Borneo can finally make it to these new pastures. For them, this is a season of abundance. For a few weeks, they will be able to feast on the reeds and high grass they relish and gobble up over 150 kilos of vegetation per day. The smallest elephants on Earth measure at most 2.50 meters at the shoulder, whereas their African cousins can be 1 meter taller. These shy animals fear the bite of the sun, and they never stray away from the forest for long. In the absence of precipitations, the water level is receding. In just a few days, the flooded forests have been drained of water. This mom and her baby are stranded in the treetops. Trapped on the territory of humans by the water level, she couldn't find any branch to cross over the flooded paths that separated her from the forest. Thin and exhausted, she must find fruit to build up her strength to save her baby. He will have to stay with his mother for about 10 years to finish his education. This indispensable apprenticeship will teach him how to distinguish between the 300 varieties of plants he can feed on. At the beginning of the 20th century, there were 10,000 of them. Nowadays, there are only 800 left. The orangutan population is probably living its last moments. Every hectare of this vegetal high-rise that climbs towards the light is home to several hundreds of plant species and a wealth of wildlife. When the water recedes, small invertebrates can leave the forest's intermediate levels. Little by little, they reappropriate the ground. Even on dry land, anything can happen. Here is the innocent responsible for throwing projectiles. At the start of this dry season, the orangutan no longer needs to travel hundreds of meters per day to feed. The trees are flush with ripe fruit. Unfortunately, this prosperous period will only last a short while for the largest arboreal mammal on Earth. Nearby, the cries of the Wallace oak eagle ring out. It's mating season. Their nest will soon host a unique egg, which makes these species very vulnerable. Not a rain shower nor a drop of rain in several days. Without mud to protect their skin from parasites, the elephants now have no other choice than to take dust baths. Deep in the forest, their watering spots are becoming scarce. These pachyderms will soon have to leave the shelter of the forest in search of the 100 liters of water they need daily. In April, the hot winds from the northeast dry out the last water holes. The oxbows are emptying out. Little by little, the animals will gather round the river. a situation that hasn't escaped this huge saurian. Oriental otters must stay on their guard. All the more so because a group of primates is also eyeing the cool riverbanks and looking for trouble. They are crab-eating macaques. These small and excitable monkeys proliferate in Borneo. These opportunists move in gangs of about 60 individuals who can take over any environment. Which is not really to the otter's liking. The macaques have learned to distrust them. Contrary to appearances, they have very powerful jaws and sharp teeth. Under no circumstances will they yield ground. They had a hard enough time digging their hole. The macaques are asked to scamper off. This tree trunk is the boundary. High above all this bickering, this older female is busy at a task she performs daily. She is meticulously preparing a comfortable nest for herself. The macaques, on their side, will enjoy the coolness of the river until nightfall. High up in the canopy, swinging in the soft breeze that caresses the treetops, this orangutan fears no enemy. Day by day, the drought is intensifying. Unusual phenomenon for this equatorial zone, it hasn't rained for 3 weeks. The water level is decreasing drastically. "300 elephants live here. Drinking and cooling off has become a priority for them. Rarely have they gathered together in such large numbers. Water rehydrates the pachyderms, but also helps them drown the parasites that infest their skin.
Wow, all of them are here. Look at that, they are so excited. After they are in the forest for 2 days, you can see how happy they are when they see the water. It's very, very dry lately. Look at that, Ita, Bibi. All the collared elephants are here. It's amazing.
Nurse Farina Othman is a PhD student at the British University of Cardiff. For 4 years, she has been studying elephant behavior at the Danau Gerang Center.
It's a bond group. I mean, several family units, they form a group into a bigger group that we call bond group. Water is very important for elephant. It's like a cooling system for them. It's to reduce heat. And from several studies, we found out that the way the female elephants strategize their movement is to make sure that they are near to the water resources. In dry season, they have to walk further because they need to find water resources. But during the wet season, they don't really have to walk far away because it will be flooded. But they can't really spend time in the water for a long time. In Kinabatangan, we have about 300 elephants, and that is a very small numbers. So we have to do as much as we can to protect them so that our next generation can still see them roaming in the wild. And in Sabah, we have increased the level of protection for the Bornean elephant. We put them in Schedule 1, which means that it cannot be killed.
These last 30 years, deforestation has progressively modified the region's climate and ecosystem. Long periods of drought have become more and more frequent. This is the nesting period for the oriental pied hornbill. This faithful couple will stay here for 3 months until the fledglings become autonomous. At the end of May, a smaller monsoon sweeps in from the southeast. Even if weaker than the main one, it will breathe new life into the forest. The water monitor has but one preoccupation: to finish digesting in peace. This large semi-aquatic lizard is not bothered by humidity. The long-nosed monkey on their side are not afraid to wet their semi-palmed feet to collect a few seeds in the mangrove. Although short-lived, the showering rains upstream are enough to bring the river back to full strength. To avoid being encircled by the flooded lands, the elephants must regularly cross the river. The elephant calf is not yet as experienced as his elders. He is only a few weeks old, and his relatively light weight is a drawback in the strong current. But he can count on the help of the females, who don't hesitate to assist him. Many elephant calves die every year, carried away by the currents of the Kinabatangan. Unaware of the scene below, a kite eagle is getting ready to strike. The bird of prey will hunt bats far into the night. At the beginning of July, with the relentless rains upstream, the river and the streams swell continuously. In the mangroves, the nice weather boosts the ardor of the dominant male. With their turned-up noses and slightly pinched expression, the females are clearly showing they are available. But it will be difficult for him to satisfy all the candidates in his harem. On this fragmented territory, the herd has wandered astray to the threshold of an oil palm plantation. Over the years, the space granted to wildlife has shrunk considerably. The oil palm plantations are inexorably expanding and making life more difficult for animals. For the government of Malaysia, this resource is the core of the country's economic growth. This sector, which feeds over 500,000 families, provides for 11% of the country's wealth. For the elephants, the damage is done. This situation is a true threat to the survival of the species. Nurse Farina Othman, constantly follows the animal she has radio collared.
There are not much space available in the forest during the flooding season because most of the ground are covered with water. So the elephant, they have to go into the oil palm plantation that have more higher ground. So this can create human-elephant conflict, and this is not good for the elephants. So I think that they will behave differently. Like in the oil palm plantation, they will create a bigger group size. So this is for the protection. So the more individuals you have in the group, the more security you got. And then probably the daily activities, probably they will spend less time feeding but more time for vigilance because they don't feel safe. It's very dangerous and risky for them. It's not very good, especially for the calf. For babies, for juveniles. And we don't know, sometimes in this water they could have lots of fertilizer from the tree. So for a long term it could affect the heart, the internal organ of the elephants. It's not really affect immediately, but for a long term, if they spend too much time in the oil palm plantation, so they could die because of this poisoning.
Farmers are wary of the intrusion of mastodons that wreck everything in their wake. Anything is good to chase them away. An additional source of stress for the disoriented animals, forced to look for exits to reach the sanctum of wild zones. As for the orangutans, the genetic heritage of these isolated elephant populations is shrinking as fast as their environment. The farmers have to make do with the unexpected presence of the pachyderms. But for how long? The stray animals, in what used to be their kingdom, will only find their way back to the forest when the water level decreases. Season after season, this is how the water cycle is perpetuated in Kinabatangan. When the flood recedes, the river waters charged with nutrients will nourish again the mangroves that trim the Sea of Sulu. Thanks to the biological diversity and natural functions that they harbor, the Great Damp Zones are an exceptional natural asset. But these wild sanctuaries are fragile. Deforestation and the fragmentation of habitats have now become the main cause of wildlife extinction in the world.